Hello, my name is Ilona, and in this short video I want to talk about self-reflection. And I think that's an essential for becoming aware of yourself and really developing like a spiritual growth, developing steps to grow. You need to be self-reflective. You need to be aware of yourself. It's like self-awareness probably is even a better word. Without self awareness, you're not really going to be able to really change yourself. Because essentially, if you want to change, you need to be able to look at yourself. Okay, what am I doing? What's going on around me? What am I creating? What kind of energies, what kind of convictions do I have in my system that's creating this? And to do that, you really have to, grow in self awareness and self-reflection. I think self-awareness is more suitable. And without that, you won't be able to step out of your role as, for instance, in this case, as human. So there are people that are just not aware of themselves. So they completely see themselves as human. So everything they do, that's completely, they identify with that. So it's very difficult for them that to see what they're doing. You can even tell them, like, this is not, what you're saying there is not, how to say, it doesn't fit with what you're doing. And they'll be just looking at you like you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Because they are completely unaware of what they're doing. They're kind of just going through the motions. They're programming, they just act in a certain way. They have a certain characteristics, and that's what they're all about. You have this saying like, well, this is my character. I won't be able to change that. Obviously, I do believe that everything can be changed, but you have to be aware of it first to change it. And to be very honest, I was aware for even when I was very young for certain situations that I didn't understand why I was doing it. And it was very confusing to me. And I always felt like it was my fault. I'm like, well, I'm doing this, but why am I even doing that? And I wasn't completely aware of anything. That doesn't mean that now that I am aware of everything. That's not the case. It's a process and you grow in that. But when I was younger, I very aware that I was aware of myself, but I just didn't know how to handle it, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't understand how it worked. So it's very difficult for me to just, how can you make someone aware of themselves? It's something that has to be built up inside. I do believe that, when you have all these lifetimes and certain consciousness, when you have a certain level of consciousness, then you will become aware of things. And I do believe that not everyone has that kind of level of awareness. So it's really pointless to try to point things out to them because they will not understand it. And of course, you have all these differences in levels of awareness as well. There are also people that are aware and they have a certain awareness of themselves, but in a way they still don't want to take responsibility of themselves. So they'll be able to use it for other people to manipulate other people, but still, put the responsibility of how they feel and how their life is going on someone else. Also with therapy, you need someone to be self-aware. Otherwise, the person won't be doing anything with therapy. Maybe they'll level up a little bit, but that's about it. Or even when people do have a certain awareness, they could be using it. Yeah, certain cases with all these therapy jargon, they can actually use it against someone else. Like, well, you need to work on that and it's your issue. And then you get those things. So it is, self-awareness is so important. It's, like I mentioned, it's the most essential thing to grow as a soul, to grow spiritually, because without it, you won't be able to step back and step out of the role you're playing. You'll be so identified with your role that you don't see anything outside of it. So, like I said, I think it has to do with, the reincarnation. If you keep getting incarnated, there comes a certain level of awareness that you can work with. I do believe that it's reincarnation loop, that what the dark energy is trying to wipe your memory when we get back, that they haven't been able to do that when someone has a certain level of consciousness, because then they'll be able to carry that with them in their role or in their life, what they're incarnating in, you know, the life they're living at that moment. I've noticed myself, there was a certain awareness, like I've mentioned, even when I was younger, I was able to just look at myself, but I didn't understand it. I couldn't use it as the way I'm using it now. And of course, I still have sometimes things that I'm like, why am I still doing this? What is it that I'm not seeing? But of course, that's a process, and it's very important with self-awareness that you keep things to yourself in a way. So if you're hurt or if there's triggers, you will look inward. Of course, you can put boundaries, you know, you don't have to accept people's behavior in certain ways, but it is about taking responsibility of your own feelings and emotions and not placing it outside of yourself with other people. It's really, that's the awareness, that is the great awakening, that we can step into our real power and to our real consciousness. So important that we look at ourselves, our own lives. What are the convictions I want to hold on to? What are the pain I'm still carrying, all the emotional baggage I still have in me? That is, of course, attracting certain people, attracting certain situations. So you can change that. You can use what you see, the reality outside of yourself, as a way to check with yourself, and then, of course, change things if you want to. That is what being self-aware is all about. So you can change if you want to. If you are happy with what you see, obviously you don't have to change anything. But it's very, very important understanding that it is in you, that you are the one creating that, looking at things in a certain way. And the people that you invite, consciously or unconsciously, are really showing you mirrors. They're reflecting, get back to that self-reflection again. They're reflecting certain things inside of yourself, and then you can use that as a tool to create something else if you want to. Like I said, you need to be aware of that you are creating it, and you need to be aware of, okay, what am I doing in this situation? What is going on, and why am I attracting these people in these situations? It's very important. That's what self-awareness is all about. So if you can reflect on yourself, self-reflection, self-awareness, then you can really take steps in growing spiritually, seeing life in a completely different way, experiencing life in a completely different way. And like I said, it's not something you can teach someone unless they already have a certain level of consciousness, unless they already have a certain awareness themselves. And then, of course, you can help them along the way, showing things, well, this is also what you're doing, but they need to be open first in stepping outside of the role that they're playing, that they're capable of looking at themselves like, okay, this is what I'm doing, but why am I doing what I'm doing? But when someone is completely identified with that, or don't have the consciousness, the level of a consciousness at that moment in time, it will be completely pointless in trying to show them. Like I said, I was already aware of this when I was very young. At least I could just step back and look at certain things, and I didn't understand it fully, but I was aware of it. And I thought everyone else was also doing that. That was not the case. I've noticed very quickly. That was not the case. So I had a lot of misunderstanding going on, and it's very important to understand that it has to do with level of consciousness. And it's really, the more conscious someone is, the more aware they are. And there's nothing wrong with being aware of yourself. Like I've mentioned, it's essential in really growing as a human being, as a spiritual being in a human experience. It is necessary. So I'd like to leave it at this and hope to see you in another video. Bye.